listening to the Caffeinated Thoughts Podcast. Hi, this is Shane Vander Hart. Happy Friday. I hope you had a great week. Today for the podcast, I don't have an interview to share, but I do want to highlight and discuss a unique candidate in a legislative race in Nevada, an important Supreme Court ruling released today, and an organization that is getting its just desserts. But first, a word from a longtime sponsor, Travis Risvold from Modern Woodmen of America, who can help you with your life insurance needs.
Hi, this is Brian Myers. When I needed a better life insurance plan, I found it with Travis Risvold of Modern Woodmen of America. When I first met Travis, he wasn't like some other life insurance agents that can be pushy and try to get you to buy something. Travis just made himself available to me. That was it. He told me to let him know if and when I needed anything, and he stayed in touch. When the day came and I did need to make some changes with my life insurance, Travis met with me and walked me through several options so I could make an informed decision. Ultimately, it was the best decision for my situation. So if you need a life insurance plan that makes sense for you, call my friend Travis Risvold with Modern Woodmen. His number is 515-883-0029. That's Travis Risvold with Modern Woodmen. He can help you find the life insurance you need. Call him at 515-883-0029.
Would you back a pimp for office? Reuters has an interesting article out of Nevada. They report that Christian conservatives in Nevada are backing a self-styled pimp. Tim Reed writes, quote, "He styles himself as America's best-known pimp, a strip club owner who runs multiple brothels and looks set to win a seat as a Republican in the Nevada legislature with the blessing of many conservative Christian voters," unquote. Dennis Hof is running for Nevada Assembly, which is their House of Representatives, basically. And as you may know, Nevada legalized prostitution some time ago. He owns the Moonlite BunnyRanch, a brothel located in northern Nevada, that is featured in the HBO documentary Cathouse. He told Reuters, quote, "This really is the Trump movement. People will set aside for a moment their moral beliefs, their religious beliefs, to get somebody that is honest in office. Trump is the trailblazer. He is the Christopher Columbus of honest politics," unquote. Reed continues to write, quote, "When news broke that Hof had won the nominating contest for state assembly seat on June 12th, evangelical pastor Victor Fuentes said he closed his eyes and prayed. He did not ask God to deliver Nevada and the Republican Party from Hof, the thrice-divorced author of Art of the Pimp, who campaigned as the Trump of Pimp. Although Christian groups have long rallied against the state's legal brothel industry, Fuentes was willing to overlook Hof's history as the champion of the flesh trade and gave thanks for his victory." He quotes the pastor, "People want to know how an evangelical can support a self-proclaimed pimp," Fuentes said in an interview at his home in Pahrump, an unincorporated town of 36,000 people that is the largest community in the sprawling rural district where Hof is favored to win in November's general election. He said the reason was simple. "We have politicians. They might speak good words, not sleep with prostitutes, be a good neighbor, but by their decisions they have evil in their heart. Dennis Hof is not like that." The pastor said he felt Hof would protect religious rights, among other things, unquote. The psalmist writes in Psalm 46, quote, "Put not your trust in princes, and the Son of Man, in whom there is no salvation," unquote. You know, I don't deny that there are legitimate concerns about the future religious liberty in the United States and probably in particular the state of Nevada. Our rights should not be elevated above God's righteousness. When we say we lay aside moral concern because of our anxiety about what tomorrow might bring, how are we different than those who are concerned about comfort and material possessions in this life? Jesus, during his Sermon on the Mount, said we are, quote, "to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you," unquote. This is a case of seeking after the wrong kingdom. There has to be a line we can't cross, even if we think someone might support our interest, even some of the time. We should never lay aside our moral principles. We should never lay aside our religious principles for political expediency. But that seems to be what the voters in this particular Nevada Assembly District are doing. The Supreme Court rules police need a warrant to retrace your cell phone locations. The U.S. Supreme Court released in their ruling in Carpenter v. United States today a case that has had some major Fourth Amendment implications, that the police will need to obtain a warrant before they can track your cell phone location. The Fourth Amendment reads, quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath and affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." From the decision summary, quote, Cell phones perform their wide and growing variety of functions by continuously connecting to a set of radio antennas called cell sites. Each time a phone connects to a cell site, it generates a time-stamped record known as Cell Site Location Information, or CSLI. Wireless carriers collect and store this information for their own business purposes. Here, after the FBI identified the cell phone numbers of several robbery suspects, prosecutors were granted court orders to obtain suspects' cell phone records under the Stored Communications Act. Wireless carriers produced the CSLI for petitioner Timothy Carpenter's phone, and the government was able to obtain 12,898 location points, cataloging Carpenter's movements over 128 days, an average of 101 data points per day. Carpenter moved to suppress the data, arguing that the government's seizure of the records without obtaining a warrant supported by probable cause violated the Fourth Amendment. The district court denied the motion, and prosecutors used the records at trial to show that Carpenter's phone was near 4 of the robbery locations at the time those robberies occurred. Carpenter was convicted. The Sixth Circuit affirmed, holding that Carpenter lacked reasonable expectation of privacy in the location information collected by the FBI, because he had shared that information with his wireless carriers. They were a third party. Therefore, according to that particular act, we don't have reasonable expectation of privacy as a result. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion and was joined by Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. Previous Supreme Court precedent from the 1970s said police didn't need a warrant to track the phone numbers suspects dialed from their landlines. It said people know that they're relying on the phone company to connect calls, and they have no right to believe that the numbers they've called are private once they've sent that information to a third party. Chief Justice Roberts writes, quote, "Given the unique nature of cell phone location records, the fact that the information is held by a third party does not by itself overcome the user's claim to Fourth Amendment protection. Whether the government employs its own surveillance technology, as in Jones, or leverages the technology of a wireless carrier, we hold that an individual maintains a legitimate expectation of privacy in the record of his physical movements as captured through CSLI. The location information obtained from Carpenter's wireless carriers was the product of a search. A person does not surrender all Fourth Amendment protection by venturing into the public sphere." And that's good to know. This CSLI, Roberts wrote, contains the, quote, "privacies of life," unquote, and violates privacy more than a vehicle's GPS records would. He said cell phones, quote, "tracks nearly exactly the movements of its owners. While individuals regularly leave their vehicles, they compulsively carry cell phones with them all the time. A cell phone faithfully knows its owner beyond public thoroughfares and into private residences, doctor's offices, political headquarters, and other potentially revealing locales," unquote. That's true. I know I faithfully carry mine like everywhere. He adds, quote, "Accordingly, when the government tracks the location of a cell phone, it achieves near-perfect surveillance, as if it had attached an ankle monitor to the phone's user," unquote. And here's the key comment from Roberts. Quote, critically, because location information is continually logged for all of 400 million devices in the United States, not just those belonging to persons who might happen to come under investigation, this newfound tracking capacity runs against everyone. Unlike with the GPS device in Jones, police need not even know in advance whether they want to follow a particular individual or when. Whoever the subject turns out to be, he has effectively been tailed every moment of every day for 5 years, and the police may, in the government's view, call upon the results of that surveillance without regard to the constraints of the Fourth Amendment. Only the few without cell phones could escape this tireless and absolute surveillance, unquote. What may now be used in a criminal investigation can later be used for more nefarious purposes. Roberts concludes, quote, we decline to grant the state unrestricted access to a wireless carrier's database of physical location information. In light of the deeply revealing nature of CSLI, its depth, breadth, and comprehensive reach, and the inescapable and automatic nature of its collection, the fact that such information is gathered by a third party does not make it any less deserving of Fourth Amendment protection. The government's acquisition of cell site records was a search under that amendment, unquote. It's important to remember that that kind of data is located anytime you power your phone on, anytime you send a text, anytime you make a phone call, anytime you use data on your phone, whether it's an app or a browser. So it's constantly being collected. You have, according to the Supreme Court, under the Fourth Amendment, privacy rights, and the government, without probable cause, can't access that particular information. They need a warrant. Generally, they need a warrant. This is a narrow scope, and they said there are circumstances where this type of information can be obtained without a warrant. For instance, if they're pursuing a suspect or if somebody's life is in imminent danger. But generally speaking, the police will now have to obtain a warrant, not just a general court order under a previous law, but they actually need to show that they have reasonable concern about the suspect and some probable cause. So this is a victory for privacy, a victory for the Fourth Amendment, and frankly, I'm surprised that Justices Alito and Gorsuch, as well as Thomas, were not on the majority side. Next, the Southern Poverty Law Center eats some crow, but first, a word from American Principles Project.
At American Principles Project, we believe that human dignity should be at the heart of public policy. We work in all 50 states and in Washington, D.C. to promote life, religious freedom, local control over education, authentic economic progress for working Americans, and a return to constitutional principles such as federalism. Want to help American Principles Project? Visit our website today, AmericanPrinciplesProject.org. That's American Principles, PLES, project.org. Sign up for email updates. Help us out. We want to work with you. That's AmericanPrinciplesProject.org.
The Southern Poverty Law Center pays $3.3 million and apologizes in a settlement with Quilliam Foundation, a London-based counter-extremist think tank, and its founder, Majid Nawaz, for wrongly adding them to their field guide to anti-Muslim extremists. Richard Cohen, the president of the Southern Poverty Law Center, recorded an apology that included language that was agreed to in the settlement.
The Southern Poverty Law Center was wrong to include Majid Nawaz and the Quilliam Foundation in our field guide to anti-Muslim extremists. Since we published the field guide, we have taken the time to do more research and have consulted with human rights advocates we respect. We've found that Mr. Nawaz and Quilliam have made valuable and important contributions to public discourse, including by promoting pluralism and condemning both anti-Muslim bigotry and Islamist extremism. Although we may have our differences with some of the positions that Mr. Nawaz and Quilliam have taken, they are most certainly not anti-Muslim extremists. We would like to extend our sincerest apologies to Mr. Nawaz, Quilliam, and our readers for the error, and we wish Mr. Nawaz and Quilliam all the best.
I reported this week in Caffeinated Thoughts that in December of 2016, the Southern Poverty Law Center published their field guide to anti-Muslim extremists with the intent to, quote, serve as a resource for journalists to identify promoters of hateful propaganda, unquote. The list was deleted in April 2018 after Nawaz obtained legal representation. The list accused Nawaz, a liberal Muslim and former Islamic extremist, of savaging Islam. Quilliam says it's the world's first counter-extremist organization. The London-based group says its aim is to, quote, generate creative, informed, and inclusive discussions to counter the ideological underpinnings of terrorism, while simultaneously providing evidence-based policy recommendations to government and building civil society networks and programs to lead the change toward a more positive future, unquote. Born in the United Kingdom to a Pakistani family, Nawaz was a former member of the Islamic terror group Hizb-ul-Tahrir, and spent 4 years in prison in Egypt because of his ties with that group. In 2017, he left that Islamic group and renounced his Islamic past and called for secular Islam. Afterwards, he founded Quilliam, and in 2015, he ran an unsuccessful campaign for British Parliament with the Liberal Democrat Party. He wrote an autobiography in 2012 called Radical, My Journey Out of Liberal Extremism, and then co-wrote Islam and the Future of Tolerance, a dialogue with Sam Harris in 2015. He's become a prominent critic of fundamentalist Islam in the United Kingdom and in the United States, and because of that work, the Southern Poverty Law Center added him to their list. This will likely be the first of many settlements. Several organizations and individuals have been targeted by the Southern Poverty Law Center, including Eagle Forum, Family Research Council, Liberty Council, Alliance Defending Freedom, the Ruth Institute, among others, released a joint statement after the settlement was announced. They placed people complicit with Southern Poverty Law Center on notice. Quote, editors, CEOs, shareholders, and consumers alike are on notice. Anyone relying upon and repeating its misrepresentations is complicit in the Southern Poverty Law Center's harmful defamation of large numbers of American citizens who, like the undersigned, have been vilified simply for working to protect our country and freedoms. With this significant piece of evidence in mind, we call on government agencies, journalists, corporations, social media providers, and web platforms, i.e. Google, Twitter, YouTube, and Amazon, that have relied upon this discredited organization to disassociate themselves from the Southern Poverty Law Center and its ongoing effort to defame and vilify mainstream conservative organizations, unquote. Now, certainly there are people on their list that deserve to be on their list, but the Southern Poverty Law Center, they're basically known for adding organizations they simply disagree with onto the list. If you're an organization that opposes same-sex marriage, you'll be on the list. If you oppose Islamic terrorism, you'll be on the list. It is irresponsible for media outlets and the like to trust the Southern Poverty Law Center as a reliable, accurate resource. Those who use them as a resource, according to the undersigned in this statement, who I believe several of whom have filed legal action against the Southern Poverty Law Center, will be considered complicit and probably subject to a lawsuit themselves. Well, this concludes today's episode of the Caffeinated Thoughts Podcast, short and sweet. Thank you so much for listening. If you happen to be listening to this podcast somewhere other than on our website, please make sure to go check out caffeinatedthoughts.com. That's CAFFEINATED thoughts.com, or Google Caffeinated Thoughts, and we will show up at the top of your search screen. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and sign up for our email so you don't miss a single article. Also, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, and be sure to give us 5 stars if you do. Google Play, Podbean, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. If you're not a subscriber, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and you can listen using your favorite podcast app. Until next time, my friends, this is Shane Vander Hart signing off, wishing you a great weekend. Take care.